Okay.
Welcoming everyone. Glad you're all here. I'm Karen Shapiro, Vice President of Partners for Progressive Israel. Thanks for being with us for Operating Beyond the Green Line, an update on Jewish National Fund KKL activity in occupied territory. Before I introduce Rany and our moderator, Sam, let me note Partners for Progressive Israel is an American not-for-profit organization dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors. We believe in the need to ensure civil rights, equality, and social justice for all of Israel's inhabitants. Partners seeks to deepen Americans' understanding of Israel's complexities so that we can better advocate for a progressive Israeli future. We are glad to be bringing this webinar to all of you for free. If you like it and want more programming like this, please visit our website at progressiveisrael.org and make a contribution. Now, to introduce our speakers. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Rany Trainin. He's the deputy chair of Keren Kayemet Le-Israel, Jewish National Fund, KKL JNF, elected in October of 2020 on behalf of the World Union of Meretz. Rany previously served as the deputy chair of the Jewish Agency for Israel, as a member of the JAFI Board of Governors, as chair of JAFI's Israel Committee, and as a member of KKL JNF's Finance Committee. As a member of Kibbutz Beit Nir, Rany filled a series of high-level positions, including that of financial and economic director, and as the CEO of its citrus fruit processing factory, Ganir. Rany has also taken on regional political roles, serving as the head of the Yoav Regional Council between 1994-2010 and as a member of the council's economic committee. Sam Norich is our moderator today. He is president of the Forward Association. He served as Forward's publisher and chief executive for 2 decades until he retired in 2017. He was executive director of the EVO Institute of Jewish Research from 1980 to 1992 and served as a vice president of the World Jewish Congress from 1975 to 1981. He is the author of What Will Bind Us Now, a report on the institutional ties between Israel and American Jewry. He also serves as treasurer of Altron Foundation and on the boards of Amenu and the Jewish Labor Committee. Sam was born in Germany in 1947, the son of Polish Jews, immigrated with his family to New York in 1957, and was educated in public schools, Columbia, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. For today's format, let me speak for a minute about that. Sam will start by asking Rany some questions. As you have questions, please type them into the Q&A. The last 15 to 20 minutes will be dedicated to your questions. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sam and Rany, for joining us. And let's get started, Sam.
Thanks, Karen. I just want to emphasize one thing that Karen said at the very end. If you have questions, please do not put them in the chat. Please do put them in the Q&A. That way I'll see them, I'll be able to read the questions and put them to Rany. So let's first of all establish what we're talking about here. We're talking about Keren Kayemet Le-Israel, the Jewish National Fund. According to Wikipedia, it was founded in 1901 to buy and develop land in Ottoman Palestine, later the British Mandate for Palestine, and subsequently Israel and the Palestinian territories. It was founded to buy and develop land for Jewish settlement. The JNF is a nonprofit organization. By 2007, it owned 13% of the total land in Israel. Since its inception, the JNF-KKL says it has planted over 240 million trees in Israel. It has also built 180 dams and reservoirs, developed 250,000 acres of land, and established more than 1,000 parks in the land. The Jewish National Fund is, of course, the organization that brought us the pushkin, the little box. And for years and decades, every Jewish child in the diaspora had one of these in their homes. Maybe not every, but we did. Children were told that it was a mitzvah to put spare pennies, spare kopecks, spare centimes into the blue and white pushka. This generation of the pushka is a more recent one. Earlier generations had the map of pre-67 Israel on the front. This one has a map, not a map, but an image of a tree about to be planted, a tree sapling about to be planted. You can understand why that was changed. Keren Kayemet Le-Israel, which is colloquially referred to by the acronym KKL in Israel, has led the way in Israel in the work of afforestation, water conservation, and land development, building roads, dams, and entire towns. All the kibbutzim and moshavim are located on land owned by the KKL, by KKL. KKL has enjoyed broad support in the Jewish diaspora, as well as among Jews in Israel. But it has also been mired in controversy, especially in recent decades, and among Palestinian citizens of Israel. Much of the land confiscated from Arab landowners in the aftermath of the War of Independence in 1948 was sold to KKL, and the fact that the KKL's mission is to reclaim land for the Jewish people has meant that it does not treat Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel equally, hence the controversy. In recent years, it's also come out that KKL, or a subsidiary of KKL, Himnuta, has been buying lands in the West Bank, in what is often called Judea and Samaria, and is called by other people Palestinian occupied territory. Finally, I want to mention that the JNF, the Jewish National Fund in America, that is JNF USA, is now separate from KKL, although the American organization does donate about 20 million of the 100 million that it raises each year to KKL. So Rany, let's begin with the decision on September 2nd of this year, when the board of Keren Kayemet Le-Israel decided to spend 100 million shekels, about $31 million US, over the next 5 years to register properties in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. What does it mean to register these properties? Why is it necessary to register them? And why is this being done now?
Okay, first of all, good afternoon. For me, it's a good evening to everybody. I have to apologize. I told before my friends that I just arrived after 6 hours of driving. In the traffic was more than in New York, you know, and let's say 40 miles took 3 hours. So I'm a little bit exhausted. I came from a cemetery, the last one for my parents' generation. She was 100 years old. She died today. She is the last one from the survivors who escaped from Lithuania in 44, escape from the Nazis and escape to Russia, and then the communists trying to get them. It was a very small group to prison, and then they escaped to Italy, and in Italy, the Israelis who served in the British unit took them as illegal new immigrants to Israel. And when they arrived to Israel beach, some meters before the beach, they came up on a rock, and then they had to escape from the ship, and she didn't know to swim, so she jumped to the water. Somebody who became a relative later on caught her and brought her to one of the kibbutzim not far from the Nahariya in the north of Israel, and she was an extreme volunteer. All the new immigrants in the 70s, in the 90s from Russia knew her as an address to help everybody what they need: clothes, food, apartments, everything. So I'm very, very sorry that we are doing it together this evening. So I hope to overcome the conversation in spite of my feeling is very involvement now with all the memories of her. So now about the question. First of all, KKL or JNF is a non-profit company, and as every company, Keren Kayemet has a lot of assets, and like every company, I am serving in many companies. I have a lot of experience in boards and executives. First of all, you must to register every asset, like everyone who is his business is lands and other properties is registering this. You have to put it in the balance of the company. You have to under all the regulations of the state, of the district, in each state, as in the same as in the United States. So in Israel now, Keren Kayemet is registering all the lands in the former, let's say, what we had lands before the independence war. You have to know that Keren Kayemet purchasing lands before 48. until today, there are a lot of lands in Jordan, in Syria, in Egypt, in Gaza Strip, who belong to Keren Kayemet. After 48, like you said before, Sam, that's what happened. But registering is permanent effort of Keren Kayemet. What happened that there was always a very, very big gap between the lands that were registered before and the lands that we have today regarding to the 12 or 13% of lands of Israel. Now, also lands in the territories were registered before. In Jerusalem, for instance, there are a lot of lands that I'm not going to describe all the procedure of apotropos. I don't know, you know the meaning of apotropos, Sam. That he is the owner of all the lands which belong to the Arabs, which escape or now living in the camps or in Jordan, but it's a regular effort and regular work in the Keren Kayemet all times. But the gap is so big that we need more money as usual to allocate more money like the 100 million. And in this point, we allocate, because today in the situation of the board of Keren Kayemet, I am as a leftist delegate, and I am glad to say that we are now many delegates which are part of the left parties like the Labour, like Meretz, and also today like Shinui or Yesh Atid, which is Yair Lapid party, which we opposed any action behind the green line. So we asked if it's include green line. So we got the answer that yes. And because this fact, we asked how much we have to allocate to the green line. Now, as a member of the board, like every board and every member of the executive board, I have to do everything for the future of the company, as any company. Otherwise, I'm not, I have to be, let's say, Neeman.
Loyal.
Yes, loyal to the company. Otherwise, I'm not loyal to the company, and they can take me to the court or sue me outside of the board. So it's not so complicated, but because it has political influence, we are very sensitive with the lands in the territories and in East Jerusalem. And what we did, the left side, that we got agreement with the executive of Keren Kayemet not to begin or to go with the registration and with the unique effort now to Jerusalem or to the territories, not before finishing the Israeli registration.
Rany, since the state was established, or maybe since the Six-Day War in 1967, has the KKL been buying land over the Green Line all the time, or is it doing so only recently?
Historical, Levi Eshkol, who was the prime minister in 67, asked the KKL to buy lands surrounded Jerusalem, like Gush Etzion, which was before in Israel, we had kibbutzim. While I was the head or the mayor of the Yoav Regional Council, I had one of the kibbutzim was Revadim. Revadim before 48 was in Gush Etzion. And so Kakal made it. Kakal used to work with the government all the time. Sometimes there are many conflicts, but because it's both our political structure, and sometimes, we are not agree because the structure is not the same. It's not a miracle of the government. Like now the government of Israel nowadays is the government of the opposition in Kakal, and the opposition of the government is now the government of Kakal. That's what happened on the last year.
We should probably explain that, but maybe in a couple of minutes.
Yes.
It has recently come out that a subsidiary of Kakal, namely Himnuta,
Yes.
purchased land over the Green Line in a clandestine fashion without the full board of Kakal being made aware of it. How did these clandestine purchases finally become known?
It is, I think, the most important issue that we have to discuss. What happened 2 years ago? I have to mention that it was under the chairman of Kakal was from the Labour Party. He was my colleague as a mayor of a regional council from the north. And
you're referring to David Attar.
Dani Attar, yes. And we got a resolution that we are going to invest in the Negev, Galil, Jerusalem, and the periphery. Behind the word periphery, I was a member of the board, and I didn't know that somebody intended to buy lands in the territories. I am living in the periphery because I am living in the south of Israel, the North Negev. Other friends of mine, one also from Meretz party, is from La'avot HaBashan. It's on the Galilee. It's also a periphery. We were happy. We are going to get a lot of help and assistance from the Kakal. But it was, they lie. Now we have a report. I am not going to show you all the report of the Doch, we call it the report Lamberger. Why Lamberger? Lamberger was the deputy attorney of the government of Israel. And he is now free, and we took him to investigate all this affair. And there is a report. And now we are waiting. On the end of December, we have to get another report, which based on Lamberger report, to understand from a judge, which is now retired, and the judge of the district court, and he is going to give us the report. And after the report, we know exactly there were 2 directors and some professionals who did it. Nobody. We did not understand that maybe Dani, as a chairman, a little bit supported them. We don't know until now.
Yeah.
I assume that.
How did it finally, Rany?
But what they did, you ask about subsidiary company. Kakal, the board of Kakal is the General Assembly of the Himnuta, which you mentioned before. But Himnuta had another company that we, as the members of the board, didn't know that this company exists. The name is Himnuta Yerushalayim. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Maybe we will go to the police and we try not to go to the police to finalize this affair. But what I have to tell you that until today, all the six, let's say, six parts of land in Jericho, Hebron, and some other places, I am not going to mention all of them, there is no deal. They're in between of the deal because we stopped it. And it's again, the left, which I know that many friends of mine very often ask me, what you are doing there? And I'm asking myself every day. And my answer, I am there to prevent those affairs, to prevent it, to try not to give a hand or assist those let's say, purchasing.
Yeah. When the new leadership of KKL was chosen, after the World Zionist Congress met on Zoom in October of last year,
That's right.
The prime minister then was still Benjamin Netanyahu,
Yes.
heading Likud-led government. But since June of this year, Israel has a government, while not a leftist government by any means, it's certainly a government headed by Naftali Bennett, but composed of a much broader spectrum of parties, including even a significant Arab and Islamic party. So does the current government prevent KKL or Himnuta from pursuing policies that the Netanyahu government would have supported? Or is this government essentially continuing the policies of the previous government?
Wow. I think that only Jews or in Israel happened such a process like we had last year. Because 1 year ago, if you would ask me if such a government could be, I would say nonsense. I demonstrated every Saturday, every week against Bibi Netanyahu as a prime minister and his government. And we succeeded. But what happened? This government decided on many things, and there is a coalition agreement. And in this agreement, there is a sentence which say the current situation of the territories is a status quo, no dealing with the Palestinians, no changing any situation by the land. We've frozen it at least for 2-3 years. This is now the situation. It couldn't be with Bibi. There are a lot of obstacles every day. And I think our achievement, and I'm looking on it's right that it's temporary achievement, that we, let's say the opposition in the KKL, until today, we stopped all the deals, and there is no any buying new lands, and nothing. It's frozen now. All is frozen. And this is our achievement in this. But we have to mention that last October, the government with Meretz and the labor inside decided about 3,000 new apartments in the territories. They agree because in the same time, they decided to have new 1,300 apartments for the Palestinians, which no government before had such a resolution about the Palestinians. So you see that also the government it's not really the status quo, but it's the Meretz and the labor prevents them to build more apartments for the settlers.
Does the nationalist camp in Israel now look to organizations like the KKL to do things that they are unable to accomplish through government institutions?
No, because
after all,
yes.
The national institutions like KKL are responsible to the Jewish people, while the government is responsible to the citizens of Israel.
That's right. On the last 2 years, let's say, because of financial issues, there was no connection between the government, official connection between the government and the KKL. I'm not going to tell you more details about because it's not our subject now. But there is a renewal of the let's say the deal between the government and the KKL. There is no one word about something in the territories, only in the Negev, the Galil, and the periphery, not the periphery of Himnuta Yerushalayim, the periphery of Israel, in the Green Line. That's the situation now. I hope we will keep it because next year we have to replace our chairman. The next chairman will be from the Likud, from the opposition, because now the chairman is part of the party of, he belongs to Bennett. So he's more moderate, let's say, in spite of his ideology. He was the one who, in the unit of settlements in the WZO, he built many of the settlements in the territories before, but now he's keeping.
Yeah, we're talking about Duvdevani.
Duvdevani, you know him, I might yes, think.
There have been efforts by leaders of both the nationalist camp as well as leaders of the peace camp to abolish the national institutions and to shift their functions and their assets to the state itself, to the state of Israel.
Yes.
Do you think that that would be a good idea now or not?
Make it short, I think it's not a good idea. Because, yes, now, on the long one, I think that normal state, part of the peace treatment, which I hope we will achieve one day with the Palestinians, I think that the national institutions has to change the policy, maybe the construction, and to be something that will be the bridge between diaspora and Israel. That's all, by education, by a mutual relationship, by diplomacy, like you have IPEC and the other organizations in the States, Peace Now and every organization. But before we have the peace agreement, I think that we still need the World Organization with KKL, with the Jewish Agency, with Keren Kayemet, and all the four. I hope that because it's political structure today, it's very, very difficult. I'm in Duvdevani, which we mentioned before. We are the two who served in all the four institutions and know them deeply better than everyone. And if I would have today a majority, I would change a lot of things which are doing there.
But what I heard you say was that we need the national institutions to continue to function as a bridge between the diaspora and the state of Israel.
Yes.
But Rany, look at American Friends of the Hebrew University, American
Yes.
Friends of Tel Aviv University. They are
That's
bridges.
right.
They are bridges. American Friends of the Israel Philharmonic is a bridge. There are many different not-for-profit organizations. So let me ask my question in a different way. Instead of merging the national institutions into the state, into the government of Israel, how about going the other way? And that they would cease to be national institutions with legal status in the state of Israel, but continue to be simply not-for-profit organizations doing their mission, which would include, their mission would include being a bridge between the diaspora and Israeli citizens. Why not?
First of all, I think that we have to encourage every bridge between Jews in the diaspora, essentially in the United States, because you are the majority today, and but the same in Argentina or Brazil or in South Africa, in every state. But I think that there is no conflict between the members who are part of the Friends of the Philharmonic Orchestra or the universities or the hospitals. It's wonderful, but it has to be under umbrella. And it's very difficult, and it has a lot of obstacles to do it through the government. The government cannot do it. It's not, look, also we have to find the way that it's the main effort, and it's the ideology of this organization. In the government, you can find many other things. We saw it. In spite, we have now two offices in the government. One is the diaspora office, and one is the Aliyah, what we call all the Olim Chadashim, the new immigrants, and so on. But it's part of the Jewish agency. We are working together. It's the same effort, which we have some definitions which each of the organization is completely complete the other one. So I think that's the right way to do it.
Let me remind everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. It's the Q&A that I will be reading from. And let me turn to those questions now. Gerald Serrata, Rabbi Gerald Serrata, writes the following. This is from Haaretz. Most of the lands in the West Bank were purchased after 1967 by the JNF subsidiary Himnuta, Judea and Samaria, now known as Himnuta Jerusalem, as you pointed out, which was established after the conquest of the West Bank. A minority of the properties were acquired by the JNF prior to 1948 by a nonprofit established during the British Mandate. Does the KKL recognize that there is a green line? What is the policy regarding annexed territory in Arab Jerusalem and in the Golan?
First of all, we have to separate the Golan from the other territories. Because you know that the Golan in the 6 Days War, and I remember as an officer in the army, the Israeli army, the high officer, that it was empty. No citizens were in the Golan. In the Golan, we had the Syrian army, which was like something which we had in Israel, the Nahal, the units which defends the state. They were soldiers. At the same time, they also got 2 cows, 3 chickens, and 1 acre maybe to live, because they didn't have salaries there. But it's an history. So the Golan is not the same situation as the territories, because the territories is full of citizens, farmers. They have everything like every place in the world. And the Keren Kayemet policy, as I know, was not to do nothing over the green line, nothing to do there. This was the policy, the formal policy. There is a big discussion. Maybe we'll finish it in the High Court, in the Supreme Court in Israel. And this is the main issue now, after we discover that there were some deals that we didn't know. There are a lot of interpretation of what really Keren Kayemet regarding to the bylaws, regarding to the memorandum, what they decided, what is the policy. This is the main now discussion. And on the last vote, you mentioned on September, was that there was, let's say, majority of 1 that got the explanation of the judge Yosef Alon, who was the advisor, the law advisor for the board. And there was a resolution which he was the one who brought it, and but we never got this resolution in the board, only in the executive. So there is no resolution now, and because there is a ticker that it's equal now between the delegates. I have to mention to you as American Jews that there are some organizations like Hadassah, like Bnei Brit, like some other organization who have delegations in the board, not in the executive. And until today, they try not to vote in political issues. But on the last vote, some of them were with the right, some of them were with the left. Because this reason, you have a lot of power how to influence and to get the right, what you think, the right resolution in the KKL by influence your organizations and the other institutions.
You just, I think, hinted at the answer to Wendy Mills's question, which was, what can American Jews do to ensure these land deals do not go forward? Do you want to say anything more about that?
I really like to thank the reform movement, the constructive movement,
Reconstructionist.
Reconstructionist, no, there are very few, but also all the, let's say, what I am calling the progressive organizations, the human progressive organizations, those who are a little bit hesitate, it's for existent Hadassah, Vico, it's old organizations. Some of them are very active, some on the past, not now, but they have delegates. The same, Hadassah have the same, like some very small groups in the States, maybe 100 people have the same power as a million. It's unlogic. It's unlogic, but it's now it's the bylaws.
Wendy Mills asks another question, and that is, what is the average age of donors to the JNF-KKL? Do you know?
I don't know exactly, but I think that it's around plus minus 60 years old.
60 years old.
Yes, maybe
So,
it's in 70. It's between 60 to 70. There
so
is no young generation, no
Right.
young generation. And
So we're not talking anymore about children putting their pennies into the pushkin.
Yes, you know, I have my own story that from grade 1 in the elementary school, every Friday I walked, it was 60, 70 years ago, when I walked on the street to you know, to get more shillings. It was the currency for Keren Kayemet. But today,
Yeah.
no more. It's just a symbol.
Ilana Miller asks a question about JNF USA. Given that JNF USA gives millions of dollars to KKL, I think about 20 million a year,
Yes.
and I assume some of that, this is Ilana Miller speaking, and I assume some goes to projects in the occupied territories. What pressure can we put on JNF here to admit their support of these policies, even though they are so-called a separate entity? This is, of course, an issue that Trua focused on over the past several years, the rabbinic call for human rights, and focused attention on this very issue. Where does it stand now?
To be honest with you, I don't know all the details in the history, why it was separate. I know that today there is no any connection between Israel KKL and the United States KKL. JNF, the same name, JNF, you know, it's the letters, but Mr. Robinson in New York has his own company, and Mr. Duvdevani in Israel has his own company. There is no connection, stories, many other things, but it's separate totally. As a former mayor, I can tell you that Robinson is going in Israel from district to district, from mayor to mayor, He assists many of the municipalities, he assists many of the kibbutzim, moshavim. He is doing well work. I think that it's very, very important what he's doing. But there are two separate organizations today.
Yeah. Okay. Abisal Metzger asks if there is a sentence in the new government's platform that there would be no changes, keeping the status quo, how and why are they continuing to agree to expansion of settlements?
I'm not in the government, so I cannot give answers behalf of the prime minister, but what I know as a former mayor, look, there is what we call a natural grow up of, schools, people are living there. So you need more class, you need more shops, you need more apartments for the same people who are living there, permanent population, which, so this what is agreed, that not to bring more settlers to the occupied territories, but to give them the chance to live. If you just got married and you need an apartment and you grew up in Emmanuel or some else, you need, let's say, 100 new apartments every year. Only it's part of the status quo. It's part of the status quo because you are not bringing new settlers.
Yeah. David Abraham asks the following. What is the difference in your view between 1948 and 1967? If you agree that there is a big difference between establishing a state and the post-67 occupation, how can you participate in the current land seizures in the West Bank?
First of all, I cannot. I said it before. I am not. I'm there to prevent it, not to make deals or compromise. I am not there for this reason. I hope that it will be part of the I still believe in two states for two people or for two nations, for the Palestinians and for the Israelis. Because I believe I try to do every effort to prevent changing the status which we have now that will prevent the possibility to reach this agreement in the future. In spite of my many friends, you know some of them because you know Israelis, a lot of Israelis from the left, from the other parties, which are not believe anymore, and they are speaking about, one state and two communities. And every day you can find in the newspapers new articles of many visions, very variety of visions from leftists before that are speaking about the two communities in one state, and some who are in the middle that are speaking more and more about the separation between Israel and the Palestinian state.
Does it seem to you that most Israelis are prepared to continue with the present situation? Or do you think that Israelis on the left and the right are eager to change it?
Look, I think that let's say the most of the Israelis are very pessimistic today. And one of the reasons that it's, look what is going in the Palestinian population, between Hamas, between the Palestinian Authority. Just this week in Ramallah, they are fighting each other, and there is no one leader. I am not dreaming about Yasser Arafat or about others, but there is no real leader. Nobody believes that Abu Mazen have the power to bring a regime which you can trust in. I am saying as a leftist, I am saying it's very difficult. And many, I think, in the Palestinian territory and in Israel, I'm speaking with many who are coming to work. So the majority say, you know, we have no any choice to continue to live as we live, in spite we know that it's the worst situation that we can have for our children, for our grandchildren, but maybe we have to go maybe another 10 or 20 years, and there will be circumstances that we can achieve the real peace, as I believe. But today it's very, very, very difficult to overcome. So I think this is the mood in Israel, and this is the mind of the majority.
You mentioned that another investigation is due to be released at the end of December.
Yes, we can meet. We will meet again on January. Maybe I will have news. I hope good news.
But let me ask, what do you think we need to keep our eye on in the next few months in regard to KKL's activities beyond the Green Line?
First, I think that the situation in the state, which was, in my opinion, very bad in with the last president, and it was, you know, Bibi and Trump together, they were a couple, unbelievable, not for you and not for us. Now it's a new period. So under your regime now, under Mr. Biden as a president, and for instance, today, there was in the news that United States is not going to open the consulia in Jerusalem, which Mr. Trump and Bibi just celebrate the opening of the embassy, and so they are not going to open it. I think it's a good step, and you have to encourage it. You have to encourage every step which is going to change the status quo regarding to apartments, regarding to lands, regarding to some other official steps. We have to keep, this is our duty as leftists, as those who are really worrying about the future of Israel and the future of the Palestinians. That is my advice today.
Thank you, Rany. Keren? You're muted.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Rany. Thank you, Sam, for this very important conversation. As you said, Rany, we must sit in these places, in these organizations, so we can make change. And I would also like to thank you both for this conversation that brings light to the work that's being done. I'd like to thank our staff at Partners for Progressive Israel, Dinesh, Ron, and Julie. And I would thank all of you who have joined us today for this briefing. We hope you been enlightened by it, and we are glad to be bringing it to you. To learn more about Partners for Progressive Israel's future programs, go to our website at progressiveisrael.org. And while you're there, we would appreciate a contribution. We wish you all a good day and good night in Israel, and take care and be well. Thank you.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you. Just one sentence. Once I was in the army, the chief of a seminar of commanders, high commanders, the most important and the one thing that we try to teach, be in the areas which you can influence. Don't leave areas which you can influence. So don't leave us alone.
Thank you.